UK car sales hit their highest level since the pandemic. That's according to new figures from the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders.
But electric vehicle sales flatlined, so with the government missing their green targets for last year. Now, this comes as Prime Minister Rishi Sunak decided to delay the ban of petrol and diesel cars from 2030 to 2035. That was after months of deliberation. Is that what's to blame for this? Let's speak to James Bowley of the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. James, thank you very much. I'm interested particularly in electric vehicle sales, missing the target there. Now, some within the industry have blamed the movement in that target to ban petrol and diesel car sales, new petrol and car diesel sales from 2035, moving it from 2030 back to 2035. Is that the real reason why they're missing these targets?
So electric vehicle sales for during this year, we've actually seen more electric vehicles sold during 2023 than in any other previous year. In fact, we've seen more sold than there were in 2020 and 2021 combined. However, the market has also grown as well after 3 years of challenges in terms of supply. So the overall share of electric vehicles on the market has actually fallen very slightly. It's about 16.5% of new cars last year were electric vehicles. And that's for a variety of reasons. But one of the main reasons that we're seeing is most of the growth in electric vehicle uptake now is by fleets and businesses who have very compelling incentives that help break down some of those initial barriers to entry into the electric vehicle market. For the past 18 months, consumers in the UK have been pretty much alone in Europe as being the only consumers that have had no fiscal incentives to actually move to an electric vehicle. And so one of the things that we will be calling for is we'd like to see that balanced out. We'd like to see consumer incentives return to help encourage more people to make that switch to electric vehicles. And in the first instance, probably the best way to achieve that will be to be reduced VAT on electric vehicles for consumers. That puts them on a bit of a level playing field with the incentives to enjoy by businesses and fleets and could really help re-energise that consumer interest in the electric vehicle market.
I'm given to understand that in the United States there's been a bit of recalibration on how they approach electric vehicles. They used to have sort of direct subsidy, and instead what the government is doing is making sure there are loads and loads of chargers everywhere, because perhaps the barriers to entry aren't so much about people thinking that this car might be a bit too expensive, but it's more about the reliability or the charging network across the country. Might that be something that is more pertinent to focus on?
That is also the other piece of the puzzle. Delivering this zero-emission transition, moving to electric, it's not just about making sure that the cars are available on the market for people to buy. It's also about making sure that people who are moving from a technology that they've been very familiar with, petrol or diesel, and moving to electric, they have that confidence that they can charge whenever and wherever they require. Now, the charging network has been growing. We've certainly seen more charge points put in this year than in previous years. But that remains a major hurdle for a lot of people who are still anxious about being able to find a working charge point. And so it's really important as well that with the new targets that are coming into force to help ensure that the market reaches that level of of electric vehicle sales, that also means that there's a really good opportunity there for the charge point operators to deliver on investment and really build that national network that gives people that confidence to make that switch.
Isn't the problem also that electric vehicles, yes, aren't necessarily as reliable as petrol and diesel cars always? Isn't it the case that quite a lot of motorists are quite happy with their petrol and diesel cars and don't particularly want to be shoved in that direction?
It's a case of certainly the people will be more familiar with particular technology and therefore that's all they want at this stage. And it's also important to remember that the end of sale date that is coming up for 2035, that is for new vehicles only. But as more of these electric vehicles become more familiar on our roads, already probably a lot of people will be regularly seeing those green number plates out there. That technology is going to become much more familiar. And also people are going to start also being able to see far more widely those benefits of moving electric. The potentially the lower running costs, the ease if you have a charger at home of being able to charge at home and not worry about finding your filling station. And also that ability as well for, to drive within low emission zones and avoid charges and those kind of things too. So So there are loads of benefits for going to electric vehicles, including the technology that's involved. And as more of those become on the road,
James,
they're going to be more.
is it going to be cheaper to run for that much longer? Because the Treasury will be faced with a big financial black hole if everyone shifts to electric vehicles, because people won't be paying at the pump for fuel. They'll have to make up that shortfall in one way or another. Could that mean more road taxes?
But that's a longer term thing, and that's something for whichever future governments are in place in a few years' time to work out, essentially. But in the meantime, there's that real opportunity to drive that adoption now, that opportunity to give consumers that tax cut that on VAT on new electric vehicle purchases. That will help them then move to electric vehicles. It helps level the playing field and means that we can see perhaps an extra 250,000 on top of what we're expecting to see in terms of electric vehicles on the road within the next 3 years.
Interesting stuff. Well, James Bowley of the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, thank you so much for putting that case across.
Is that levelling the playing field? Tax cuts for electric vehicles?
Do you know, I'm not really
right?
a fan of sort of lots of different levels of VAT. I think if you're going to have VAT, have it at one level and don't distort the market too much. But I do think we need a lot more chargers across the country. And sadly, it comes back to my favourite issue, Emily, which is it's too hard to build things in the United Kingdom.
Well, yes.
Far too hard.
Well, yes.